Okay, so this is Garkar, that's weird for me to say. Introduce me, I'm Jen, and I work for an engineering firm as an architect and a project manager. So a lot of what I do every day is I design the world around you. So whether it's buildings or coordination of different disciplines, whether it be engineers or cities, I coordinate all of that. So I kind of make everything fit together and happen. So today we're going to go through green architecture. Whenever I say green, it's kind of a slang word for sustainability. Do you guys know what sustainability is? Okay. So it's kind of just like the shortened word for it. So you're going to kind of hear those two terms used interchangeably throughout this presentation, but they all kind of mean the same thing. So we're going to start, look at it worked. Okay, so there's these 6 pictures up here. Which ones do you guys think represent green, sustainable things, architecture, the built environment?
The house with the solar panels.
Good. Anyone else? Go ahead.
The one with the garden.
This one?
Yeah.
Those are called permeable pavers, which we'll get into a little bit later, but it's basically like you have a paving surface, but then water can penetrate through either through the block itself or around it, which allows you to have less surface runoff. Anything else? You guys see any other pictures up there that might represent a more sustainable approach to buildings? Go ahead.
The sink.
That's a touchless faucet. Anyone else? All right. They're all examples of sustainable architecture. So in this first one, that's just kind of representation of green cleaning products. Because a lot of what we use, whether it's bleach or Windex for the windows or whatever, has a footprint on our earth because it's releasing, well, they could be CFCs, there's not really as much of those anymore, but VOCs and things into the atmosphere which create pollutants. So it makes it harder to breathe. People with asthma makes it harder. It also affects our ozone, so it has lots of different things. So you wouldn't think about it, but whenever you clean things and you have maintenance products in your buildings, that can also affect how we impact our earth. The second picture is an example of daylighting. So whenever you have a lot of windows, whether it be windows or skylights, they will let light into the building, which means you need less actual lights. So then you're not running up electricity and you're not using that energy and you're saving it. So there's some conservation measures there. Solar panels is in the far corner, and that kind of goes in line with daylighting. It's all that saving electricity. We talked about the touchless faucet. So what they do is when you turn the faucet on, it runs. When you have a touchless faucet, it will only run if your hands are under it. So it removes the air of you didn't turn it off the whole way, or you turned it on more powerful than you need it to be. Touchless faucets there's a little piece underneath here that's called an aerator that helps the flow of the faucet. If you guys notice, like, it only comes out one way. So you can't turn it up really high, so it kind of regulates it so you don't overuse water. We talked about the permeable pavers in the middle, and then the far picture is cork flooring. So cork is a very renewable resource. There are some resources that we use that take years and years, and when I'm saying years, I'm talking thousands of years to create. And then there's things that we can use that grow pretty quickly, like cork. I think cork is renewable in like 10 to 20 years. So we want to try and use those resources that we can get back quickly, and it doesn't have to wait for lifespans to come back. Okay, so how we kind of measure buildings and how green we are with that building, and I say building, but it's really the site, the building, the whole kind of component, bless you, of that area, is with the LEED standards. I think there is a slide in between here. Can you go back to? Nope, okay, so yeah, go forward one, I'm sorry. So the LEED standards are divided into basically 6 credits. So we have sustainable sites, which basically, I think of it this way, threshold out. So the threshold is the piece in your door where your door closes, so it's everything kind of from there outward. Then we have water efficiency, which is going to be just what it says. It's going to be your faucets, it's going to be your low flow toilets, those kind of things, just decreasing the amount of water that you consume on site. energy and atmosphere, and deals with saving electricity, more efficient HVAC units, which is the mechanism of bringing air into your space. If you guys ever see like they just look like big boxes on the top of roofs or sitting next to buildings. Those are called HVAC units, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning units. Then materials and resources would be like that cork flooring, trying to use recycled content and new materials. Maybe it's when you tear down a building, you save pieces of it to be put into the new building. A lot of times we do that for fill. We'll tear down like a foundation of a building that might be block or stone, and then we'll crush it up and then we'll use it for fill, so we don't have to bring in virgin fill. We're kind of already using what's there. Then we have indoor environmental quality, and that's basically like human comfort. Is the air clean? Are the light levels comfortable to someone's eyes? Does everyone want to kind of function in that space? Is there enough daylight that makes them happy? Those kind of things. It's all about kind of like human comfort. Then we have innovation in operations and regional priority. So the innovation in operations is kind of really widespread. It's really up to the design team to find that thing that is not in any of these other categories, but that will save something in energy or comfort. So that could, it's a really wide range. It could be that there's certain standards within the LEED design guidelines that you have to meet to get that credit. Maybe it's that they have went over and above meeting that credit. So it could be things like that. It's really quite endless. And then the regional priority is in every area of the United States is in need of something, or it's hard to get something else. So the regional priority kind of capitalizes on that. So it'll say, like in this area, one of the things that we try and do is conserve our water, because we are we get the water from Lake Erie. So we're kind of like the first users of it. So if we heavily contaminate it, then it's going to go out to everybody else, and then it has to be cleaned more and stuff like that. So there's certain, depending on where you are, there's certain regional priority credits that you can get if you kind of focus on that area that is good for that area. So I was just talking about LEED, and you're probably like, what do these letters stand for? So it's Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, and this is kind of a guide. Like I said, it's kind of a guide that we use. It is a certification that you can get for a building. There's a bunch of different types. You can get new building, major renovations. There's one specifically for schools. There's one for residences. So you can get them in different areas, and it's based on this point system that you can see over in that little box that looks like nutrition facts on the back of food.
Yeah, it does.
So those are the credits that you can get. And then here are your certifications. Platinum is the highest, and certified is the lowest. But what we are finding in the industry right now is that owners want to design to certain standards so that they get the payback from having energy efficient, whatever, insert light fixture, HVAC system, whatever it is, but they don't want to pay for the certification because the certification is expensive. You're going to get a lot of work, not only in the actual fees to obtain the certification, but you get a lot of extra money in people like me that has to fill out all the paperwork and compile all the documentation, and it takes a long time. I've worked on a couple of actual LEED certified projects, and it's like we almost spend more time doing the administration portion of it than we would actually do designing the building, and owners really just don't want to pay for that. They'd rather put more energy efficient measures that's going to make their lighting bill go down or whatever than spending it on administration. So the first section of the LEED accreditation is sustainable sites, location and transportation. As you guys can kind of see in the white box, can everyone read those? Okay, so I'll just kind of go over some of them quickly. So you can get certain points for neighborhood development. So what that means is if you are in an area that you're basically close to all your amenities, and there's a bunch of them: restaurants, dry cleaners, post office, church, grocery stores, etc., so that you're not taking a car to those places, because then you are minimizing your carbon footprint. Then we have sensitive land protection, and that means like if you had, say, a farm, you wouldn't develop it because you want to keep that natural land, or if it's a was part of a forest or something like that, so you wanna kind of preserve that land. A high priority site is maybe you wanna build a school in an area where there isn't a school, people have to travel a long way to get to school, then that would be considered a high priority site because it's a building that's really needed in that area. You have surrounding density and diverse uses, so you get a lot of extra credits if you're like in the middle of a city or in an area where there is a lot of infrastructure already there, so you're not worrying about, building something out in the country and taking a lot of water line there, have to get the gas line out there, etc. Then we have access to quality transit. Are you going to be close to the RTA, the bus system? Can you quickly get to places without always having to drive your car? This could also be, is there maybe incentives for carpooling, that kind of thing. Then there's bicycle facilities, which is just what it says. A place where you can just keep your bike, basically like a parking garage for bikes, so that you can drive your bike to work and not have to ride in a car. Reduced parking footprint is to get less parking, and you do that by being able to have bicycle facilities which take up less room than a car, that kind of stuff. And then green vehicles, which is what you see here, is being able to plug in a vehicle, or maybe it's, a hybrid, or you'll see a lot of cars now that have like EcoBoost or more ecologically friendly engines. So then we move on to sustainable sites. And so in each one of, I won't say in each one because I don't think they all have them, is in the separate sections of LEED, you will have sometimes prerequisites. Who knows what a prerequisite is? Anyone? Okay, so it's what you need first before you can move on. So you have to fulfill the prerequisite before you can get any credit. If you don't fulfill your prerequisites in here, you can't get any credit. So this is pollution prevention. So there's a lot of different things that go into that. It could be mats at your doorway so that you're not tracking dirt and germs into a building. It could be filters. It's a multitude of things fall into that. So then you have your site assessment, and then I'm going to say your site development, protect and restore habitat kind of go together. Because what you want to do is kind of like I said about the areas is that you don't want to take down a forest or something to build a building. That's kind of what those two credits talk about. Open space, you want to have an area where there's green space. We need grass and trees and everything to help us breathe better, and it just makes people happier, and it helps with our surface runoff. Every time you build a building, you have to be able to contain that stormwater. And if you don't, then you have a lot of problems with the infrastructure of drainage and things like that. So grass and trees and greenery help do that. That kind of goes into the rainwater management. Then we have heat island reduction and light pollution reduction. So heat island reduction is if you have something that's black, what does it do with light and heat? Absorbs it. And what if it's white? Right, so that's what you want to do, and it kind of depends on where you are. Because in Florida, what do you guys want to do with the heat? You want to reflect it, and then but like up here where it's cold most of the time, or Alaska say, what do you guys want to do with the heat? Right, so you want to try and take advantage of the sunlight and the atmosphere that you have, so it reduces the impact that you put on your energy consuming things like an HVAC system or like lighting. And then light pollution reduction is, there's a lot of animals that are very sensitive to light. There are a lot of different organisms that are sensitive to light, so the whole point of that is to not overlight the exterior. One, you're using light that you probably don't need, and two, you have light out there that might be harmful to birds, or in Southern California, or Southern Florida, there is a specific turtle, I forget what it is, I designed a mall there once, and we had to have these special lights that only lit so far in the air because it would affect how the turtles migrated and would affect their mating. So lighting can impact a whole species like that, and you would never even think about it. So the next one is the water efficiency. Water efficiency is a pretty simple one. I'm going to kind of group them all together because It's all what it says. We're gonna try and reduce the amount of water that we use. And that can be done across all parts of your design. It can be done outside. Maybe you don't have an irrigation system. Maybe you use plants and trees that are native to the area so that they don't need water. And then inside, like we looked on that first slide, we had, what was on the first slide for water? For water conservation. What was one of the pictures on the first slide?
Sink.
Sink.
Yeah, the touchless faucet. So that's another way that you can limit the amount of water that you're using. If you guys go into restrooms and you don't have to flush the toilet with your hand, it just flushes automatically. Is that what I'm talking about? So that's another use because it uses only so much water and it only flushes one time. There's toilets that only use a little bit of water, like there's 2.8 gallons, 1.6, and 2.8. So you can get one of those toilets that it only flushes with a little bit of water. So we're really reducing the amount of water that we take in. There's other things that you can do that you can kind of recycle the water. So there's gray water and black water. So gray water is what you would have like from a shower or from a sink just washing your hands. Black water is from a toilet. So you can't reuse that, but you could take gray water and intercept it in the drainage and store it and maybe like water your plants with it, or it would get cleaned and then water your plants, but you wouldn't want to drink it. So there's different ways that you can do things with water there. And the next one is energy and atmosphere. This is where you're gonna get the biggest bang for your buck as far as operational costs go. So this is where you would have more insulation in your walls to keep your heating costs and your air conditioning costs down. This is where you would implement windmills and solar panels. So these are all topics here that will really reduce your operating cost for that building. This is what owners like. Owners like you to see a lot of points here. This one has a lot of their prerequisites for that reason. Like you have to meet, as the standards are set up right now, it's called ASHRAE. And that is basically like the Bible for designing HVAC and electric components of buildings. So this is really focused on that, and then it gets into the renewable energy, and then you can even take energy that you get from solar panels or windmills, and if your building doesn't use them, you can basically sell it back to the electric company, and then they can reuse it. So you're making some of their energy for them, and they like it too because they're not paying you for it, and they get to resell it. But sometimes there's credits and things that you can get. So materials and resources. This is the hardest one to get. Not that it's difficult to find things that can meet this credit, it's really hard to prove. Because there's post-consumer and pre-consumer. Anyone want to take a shot at what post-consumer and pre-consumer is? So go ahead.
Pre-consumer is like you plan what you're gonna buy, before you buy it, you plan what you're gonna buy.
Yeah, kind of. So the pre is before it gets made. So it's going into, say you're making carpet, and so you have to plan what goes into that carpet. And it's pieces that maybe it was remnants that was used during the manufacturing process they put into that piece of carpet. So that's pre. Then post is they've taken out carpet out of a building, recycled it, and now they're putting that back in. So you kind of have to balance that. And that's sometimes hard to find that information. Another thing is, like this picture shows, this is reclaimed wood. So maybe they tore down a barn or something and they took all the wood off of that. And then now they've used it used it for a feature wall. One of the credits is that you don't destroy in a renovation the walls, the floor, or the ceiling. You would only take down like the finishes. You could take out the cabinets and you could take off the finished floor, but you leave the concrete below it. So you're not putting a lot of energy back into the building for the big pieces. You're just changing out the finishes and stuff like that. The picture with the trees, those are bamboo trees. So like we had talked about what type of flooring on the first slide. Good job. So we talked about the cork flooring. Bamboo is another rapidly renewable resource. So bamboo grows quickly, so that's something that you'll see, if you ever see the hardwood floor that kind of looks like it has a bunch of lines in it, like a bunch of notches, that's bamboo flooring, because you can't really see it there, but bamboo has like a notch every like couple inches. But that grows quickly, so they make flooring out of it because they can get it back quickly more than they would like, that's why we don't see redwood floors, redwoods don't grow. And then in the far picture, there's a picture of a truck, so it's reducing your carbon footprint. So what they like to do is that you get all your materials within 500-mile radius of your project site. So in Cleveland, in this area, we're a little bit at a disadvantage because why? What do we have to the north of us? A big body of water. So we kind of only are like 3/4 of a circle for our radius, because unless it's coming out of Lake Erie, we can't get it from there. But most places it's a 500-mile radius and you would get this credit. So you want to try and keep, your tile. You don't want to get your tile from Italy. You want to get it from somewhere close. And a lot of manufacturers now are doing that. They're putting these little plants all over the United States instead of just big ones, so that they can keep their carbon footprint down a little bit. Indoor environmental quality. So this is one that kind of ranges a little bit, because we have things like the daylighting. Most people would rather see regular light than artificial light. We have things like LED light bulbs. You can switch out a harsher fixture, even though LEDs are more energy efficient, they're also easier on your eyes. There's a couple seals here, the Green Guard and the Green Seal are kind of just labels that give you kind of just a quick, like, hey, I know it has it, I know that's a good one I can use. So those kind of help us along. Another one is, like, if you see in that picture over there, are views. Like, so you look out your window and you don't see another building or see a manufacturing plant, you can see trees and a pond or something like that. This gives you a little bit of a diagram of how we want kind of air to circulate. You have your mechanical ventilation, which is what would come out of here. These are supply vents. But then you also want to have this is called passive windows. You want to have a cross breeze, because then if it's a nice day, say in the spring, but maybe it's a little too hot to have all the windows shut, but it's not hot enough to have your AC on, you want to be able to have that breeze coming in so you don't have to turn your AC on. Another a prerequisite for this is that you can't smoke within 30 feet of an entrance to a building or any windows. So then that keeps you from getting smoke into buildings and helps people breathe better. And then I had mentioned before about mats inside doorways to get germs and pollutants off of your shoes, so you're not tracking them through a building. Indoor environmental quality, again, it's a lot of the same stuff. Again, we talked about the windmills. If you guys can see, a lot of this stuff is overlapping. So one of the things that's nice with this is if you have a credit in one area, you may get it in another. You might have to do a little bit more for it, but there's a little bit of overlap. So you might just have to go up maybe another standard or add something into it, and you can get another credit. The ponds you can see here, it is taking an area, like you have to have storm runoff if you have so much area of a site, but then working it into being something that you want to see, that it's not just this like pond in the corner and it's forgotten about, but maybe it becomes a feature. In this corner picture here, this is kind of a desolate site, which we call a brownfield site. Does anybody have any idea what brownfield might be? So they call it a brownfield and greenfield are kind of your two sites. There's also a black field too. If you have something there that maybe was contaminated, in this area we have a lot of brownfield sites, because what was the Cleveland area, what's it known for? Like, what did it manufacture and was built on? Does anybody know? Steel. Steel's dirty. To make steel, it's a dirty process. So if you would go down to like the steel mills and take that dirt, it's going to be contaminated. It's going to have chemicals in it, or it's going to be very high metal content. So whenever you have a brownfield site, people have to come in and clean that up so that you can put another building on it and you're not harming the occupants in that building. Another thing, the greenfield site would be like if you took a park that has never been built on. A blackfield site is a really heavy contaminated site. Like maybe it was I don't know, a manufacturing facility for like hydrochloric acid or something, and it like leaked into the ground.
Or like essentially the power plant.
Yep. So anything like that that would be really like detrimental to human beings. So how do you guys think that we can become more green as people? Like what could we do individually? Go ahead.
We could plant more trees and take care of the environment better.
Absolutely. Which one way, like what's a really easy way that you guys might see around that you can make that environment better?
Compost?
That's a great one. Yep.
Recycling.
Very good. Yeah, recycling's very easy to do. That's actually one of the prerequisites in the LEED certification is that your building has to be one that has recycling bins, and you have to do it for paper, plastic, and glass. Yes?
Using more biodegradable materials.
Mm-hmm. And do you guys remember in the first slide whenever I talked about the cleaning products? That kind of goes hand in hand with that. Like you can have biodegradable materials in packaging. Like if you ever noticed, like if you might get a toy a long time ago, it came in styrofoam. And now do you notice it comes kind of in that like brown cardboard packaging? That's a green change because styrofoam is very detrimental to the environment, but the cardboard is easily biodegradable. Same thing with like a white napkin and then like the brown napkins that you get. It's the same thing. Do we have other questions or any other ways that we can become more green?
I don't really have a thing that you know about the lights that you guys do different turtles.
Mm-hmm.
I really did this, they had that, it was because when the turtles were laying eggs and stuff, they would follow the moon.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
So
and
that's the lights they get.
that's the exact reason, is because it messes up their mating and stuff, and then the turtles would be extinct. So it's not just human comfort, it's not just being able to save owners of buildings money. You know, it has to do with preserving wildlife and keeping their habitats, because those animals are important to us too. Go ahead.
Don't fluorescent lights, can't they cause seeing problems?
So a fluorescent light, so there's different types of fluorescent lights. Typically, the higher the number, so fluorescent lights are tubes, as you can kind of see in here, there's lines. So they're tubes, so that's noted by a T. So there's like T5, T8, T12. The higher the number, the worse the fixture is. So the more energy efficient it is. And it puts off what's typically called a warm light. Warm is a little bit better on your site than a cool light, but it all deals with the temperature. Oh, this is really like an electrical lesson, I'm sorry.
No, that's good because we studying.
Okay, because it all deals with the temperature of the light. So depending on what T you get, mixed with that temperature of the light, depends on how harsh it is on your eye. So LED lights are cool. That's when, like, if you ever see them that they're like blue, if you guys know what I'm talking about, like the blue lights, those are typically an LED light. A lot of times you'll see them on cars. That's a really cool light, and that's hard on your vision, especially if you're in like an office because it creates glare on computers. So they have made LEDs now warm to reflect a fluorescent, but it has a different temperature range. Does that make any kind of sense to you guys? Because it's a little bit, lighting is kind of complicated like that. What's up?
LEDs also use less energy.
They use a lot less energy.
They last a lot longer.
Correct. So LED lights, if you ever look at like a fluorescent light and an LED light, you will see like a fluorescent light, or they're like what, like 60W, I think. So that's like a 60 watt. But an LED version of that light might be like, I think they're like 6, or maybe they're 8 or something. So you get the same light output for far less energy. The thing with a LED light is when you have fluorescent or even incandescent, which is like what a typical light bulb looks like. That's an incandescent light that has like the little filament inside. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So those are a light bulb. So you replace the light bulb. A lot of times, and I say a lot of times because it's not as much this way anymore, with LEDs you replace the light fixture. So they've made them so that you only have to replace them like every 15 to 20 years because it's a lot more expensive to replace the light fixture than just the light. There are some lights that are LED that you can just replace the light, but then you also have to replace the ballast, which is like, if you figure you plug a light into something, the ballast is kind of behind it, what makes it work. Yes.
There's also OLED, which, does that use less power?
LEDs,
OLED,
in comparison to a fluorescent or comparison to an LED?
in comparison to an LED.
It's just a different type. I think the actual input of power is the same.
Okay.
You're gonna go, I think the next slide is just questions, but we're kind of in that anyway. Do you guys have more questions or more ideas of how we can be green? Anyone from back here? You guys haven't talked much. So my presentation was that awesome that you don't have any questions?
Just give Ms.